Thank you, and welcome to episode 41 of Seeking Focus.
Welcome to Seeking Focus, a podcast that provides photographers and videographers with a place to critically compare technology, share ideas, and enhance their skills.
Okay, so episode 41 with Marty and myself. We're actually doing a bit of a different setup today. I'm actually in my kitchen, so apologies about the echo. And
get rid of all the pots and pans, mate.
Yeah, no, I've already washed those. I wasn't allowed to do any. I wasn't allowed to play with the podcast until such time as the dishes had been done. And Marty's at his studio via telephone. So we're actually doing a live recording in my kitchen using a telephone. So Marty, how are you? How's your week been?
Hey, Evan. How you going? That's the question, man. I haven't seen you or heard from you for a while, mate. We were hoping to record this podcast episode for a while now, mate. You've been back, right? So from overseas?
Yeah, just for a couple of weeks.
Mate. Mate. Yeah, look, I've been good. I've been actually a bit busy. As listeners probably know that I've resigned from my part-time jobs, and I've been pushing video photography a lot more. So it's just a lot of work in the sense of catching up with customers, clients, and then letting them know I'm available 24/7 virtually now. So it's an interesting thing going forward full blast, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of unpaid sort of, work as well. So like I've got to start changing my website to updating it, changing a few things, social media. It's actually, if this is your full-time gig, you got to sort of, spend more time and effort on it, you know what I mean?
No, definitely. I'm actually not spending that much time on it, so I'm gone the complete opposite to you. So, yeah.
Oh. Hey, you went to Canada, didn't you?
I did.
I want to know more about that, mate.
Yeah, so basically, it was a 5-week trip. So flew into Vancouver, travelled around Vancouver a little bit, then got into a prop plane and flew up north in British Columbia. So probably travelled 3 hours by prop plane and then got into a car and kept driving north. We were just in snow. It was just constant snow everywhere that you looked, and we were at the top of a mountain where we were staying. And it was fantastic. Spent a lot of time there. It was the temperature range between -15 and -25. So yeah, it was quite extreme. But there wasn't heaps of wind, which meant that it didn't feel cold. So that was quite a beneficial sort of thing. If there was wind, I reckon it would have been horrible. But so we stayed up there for probably about 3 weeks in the mountains. And then came back down to Vancouver, grabbed the car, went over the border, went into America, and travelled to Seattle.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so I did a bit of a tour around Seattle, then stayed there for about a week, and then came back up into Vancouver, flew out from Vancouver, and we decided to stop off on the way home in Hawaii.
Oh, so maybe nice and warm.
Yeah, so as we mentioned in the previous episode, there was I was traveling with my family, but I was doing photography separately to them, so I was traveling quite a bit by myself, but also with the family. So on the way home, we thought, let's hit Hawaii and let the family enjoy themselves. And it was really nice. Hawaii is always a fantastic place to visit. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we did.
I've never been to Hawaii, so I want to know more about it, mate. But the previous episode that we talked about was we had a bit of a dilemma, didn't we? Which camera gear to bring. So, I was sort of 50-50 on certain things, and then you were kind of, no, you got to take that, no. So what did you end up taking with you?
Well,
I want to know.
Ironically, I actually took what you recommended. So I went with the 15-35 2.8 and the 24-105 f4. And I also took along a variable ND filters, a couple of them actually. Hand controller, which, for being able to do long exposures and stuff without touching the camera. And in addition to that, I also took a whole bunch of filters up with me, graduated NDs and stuff like that. I ended up doing what you suggested in the end. So, you can't say that I don't listen.
I know you listen. Yeah. I'm not sure if you do. You didn't listen to me when I tell you to buy a Sony.
Yeah, well. But it was interesting because pretty much that's what I've always travelled with, the wide angle, the zoom, end of story.
Yeah.
This time around, I actually have to say I probably took the wrong gear.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Good tell.
yeah. So what I found was predominantly I used the 24-105 f4. I've always been a fan of the 24-105. It's been my go-to lens for travel photography, and it didn't fail me this time around. Lightweight,
Nice.
good range, did a lot of panoramic shots with it, and it worked in every situation. The 15-35, I think I took it out once or twice and very quickly put it back inside the actual case and didn't use it again. The reason for that,
interesting.
the reason for it was, and I think it's very much based on situation, because if I'd gone there in spring or in autumn, or if I'd gone there in summer, I probably would have used that lens a lot more. But as far as when it's winter and there's just ice everywhere and snow everywhere, I was basically just getting this really wide shot of white, and it really didn't capture very much. It didn't look quite right. It was just this big empty space of white. So I found that using the 24-105, I was able to zoom into certain and create some atmosphere there, because it wasn't just these wide shots which had nothing in them. So the 24-105 ended up being the one that I was using predominantly, and then I actually did do a little bit of nature photography as well. There was a few birds and stuff like that, and I found myself wishing that I had taken the 70-200, which I never thought I would ever say that, but it came down to the fact that it was snow and ice everywhere. So wide angle shot, everything was just white. There was no oomph to it. And yeah, pretty much that's what I figured out. I made a mistake, but it depends on your situation. In addition, one of the reasons we decided to take the 15-35, as we discussed, was for nighttime shots. When we had the
Northern Lights.
Northern Lights. Ironically, and as we mentioned in the previous episode, you can't book a session with them. They happen when they happen. So we got a phone call about 3 days before we actually ended up going up to North Canada. And we were told, the Northern Lights are here. They're awesome. Everyone can see them. They're beautiful. And we're like, yeah.
Wow.
We got up there and there was nothing for the whole time that we were up there. And then we left.
So hang on. So is it because it was a cloud cover, or is it because they just basically disappeared?
No, it just wasn't there. There was a couple of nights where there was really thick cloud cover, but predominantly it was actually quite clear skies. They just didn't appear for the whole time that we were there. And once we left, we got a phone call about 2 weeks later saying, "Hey, they're back. Do you want to come back?" And we're like, "Yeah, no." So I think if we managed to get any of that type of stuff happening, it would have been worthwhile having the 15-35. But it didn't happen, so there was just no point to it. In addition, probably the only sunrise shot that was actually worth taking was, I woke up one morning and it was actually quite strange getting there, because their sort of times vary to here in Melbourne. Like here in Melbourne at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's daylight. It's usually daylight till about 9 o'clock during summer. We got there and we landed at 4 o'clock, and this was, I think it was Vancouver. And when we landed, everything was dark. And I looked at my watch. Yeah,
everything's pitch black, yeah.
Yeah, and I looked at my watch and it said 4 o'clock. And I'm like, it must be 4 o'clock in the morning, because, the sun hasn't come up yet. And then you hear the captain say over the microphone, "And we've just landed in Vancouver. It's 4 p.m. And you're like, what? So getting used to the times was a bit weird. And sunrise was at 9:30 in the morning, which caught me off guard, because normally here when we do sunrises, we're getting up at 6-7 o'clock, and
yeah, that's right.
You don't usually get up at 8:30 and have breakfast and then go, I better go get the sunrise. But what ended up happening was the best sunrise. It was just a die for. We were on top of a mountain in a ski resort, which was on the 3rd level, and they had these massive windows. I'm talking, they were like 8 meters high. They were just huge. It was like the entire wall was made of glass. And so you're elevated at the top of the mountain and you could see over the trees. And as the sun would come up, it would just glow through the trees. It looked amazing, right? Now, because they've got the multi windows, like they've got 3 layers of windows to keep out the cold. Because here in Australia we've generally got 1 or 2 layers of windows. There they've got 3, and they've got argon in the middle and everything to stop all the mist. Condensation. That's it.
Condensation. Yeah.
So the argon stops it from creating condensation. But the problem is you can't really shoot through the panes of glass, unless they're perfectly clean, which they never are. So I would run outside, and I'd run down 3 sets of flights of stairs, and then run onto the snow and try and take this photo. And then suddenly I'm underneath the trees, so I wasn't getting the same effect. And it drove me insane because I couldn't get this shot no matter what I did. And then finally I gave up, and my wife took a photo with a mobile phone from a window and it came out perfect. And she's like, "Oh, look, I got it." And I was just like, "Shut up." So that's probably.
Mate, I keep on telling people, man. Like, people come to me and they go, "Which camera should I buy? I'm going overseas." And I said, "Spend money on your phone, mate, because you're not going to be processing images or whatever else. Unless you're really into photography, you're not going to be fluffing around with photos and other things." You know what I mean? So, mate, totally understand though. It's a tricky one, unfortunately, shooting through windows. I've got a little like a lens hood thing.
Yeah, it's a shroud. It's a shroud, the one like donut that fits over your lens and then covers itself.
Yeah,
it's like a giant suction cup.
Yeah, essentially it is. It's it's from like rubber.
Yeah,
so you fit the lens through, and then it's quite good.
We've used the same ones, I think, at a couple of the Ronin shoots actually.
Possibly,
many years ago. Or if you don't have that, you can always tear your t-shirt off and wrap it around the outside of the lens to block out the light, which always goes down a treat if you're in the middle of a tourist area and there's a whole bunch of Japanese tourists looking at you while you're tearing your shirt off in the middle of them, which I actually did.
Do you want to show your abs, did you?
My slabs. I don't have abs. I've got just a big belly. But yes, I actually did that in Shanghai, and people were looking at me like there was something very wrong with me, but I wanted to get that shot, and I did get it. All right, so look, basically it was a great trip. Probably didn't get as many photos as I wanted. I didn't do any video, ironically, because I was planning on going to do video and photos, and at the last second, after trying to decide what things to take with me, I decided I wasn't going to do video, so I didn't take any of the Cine lenses, which was probably a great thing because I had so much gear in my backpack that it was difficult. So when you're walking along in snowy areas like that, what ends up happening is, you've got to be wearing those big, massive snowshoes that look like tennis rackets, giant tennis rackets.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just sink into the snow. And trying to walk along anywhere with those on, in addition having a backpack full of camera gear, it's not pleasant. It's actually quite difficult. And that's when I started leaving the 35, the 15 to 35 at home or in the apartment because there was just no point in carrying it. And, so I tried to go as light as possible, but even still, it was a pain in the rear end. I have to give credit to the bag that I was using. It's the same bag that I use every time I go anywhere. F-Stop.
F-Stopper?
Yeah. F-Stop is it's an amazing bag. The mountain design. We're not sponsored by them in any way, but they're just fantastic bags. They're designed for hiking. They're very comfortable. They hold your camera. They're Well, they're meant to be waterproof, and you can put a cover on them. I guess they would become waterproof, but with every bag, it doesn't protect the bag's contents from water that's going down your back. Because if you're hiking and water's on your back, it steams up, and the steam goes into your bag. And overall, fantastic bag.
So which one do you have? Because there's different types.
I think I've got them all. I've got the full range of them.
I know you've got them all.
And this was the Agna that I was carrying. So the Agna was just slightly smaller than one that you've got.
So that's what, 40 litres?
38 and 40.
38, okay. Because I've got the Tilopa. That's 47.
Yeah, so it looks exactly the same. It's just a slightly smaller version, and realistically, because all I was carrying was one lens and one camera and a couple of filters, I didn't need more. In fact, it was actually probably too big for what it was. But F-Stop bag, can't go wrong with them. They're fantastic.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, for sure.
Now, of course, the problem was every time that you wanted to take a shot, you had to take the bag off, and you got a snow coat on, and you're going to try and open it up with snow gloves on. And
you do know that you can sort of clip your waist clip together and then basically turn it right around. I've done that in the past, where you actually take like your straps off your shoulders, you turn it around, and you can reach into your bag without actually putting your bag down on the ground.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. And look, that is another way of doing it, but I actually just find it easier to unstrap, just throw it off my back, throw it onto the ground, and it's a tough bag, so you can deal with that. But I discovered a lot of interesting little things, little tidbits whilst I was traveling, and I think one of the most interesting things was carrying a camera in your hand in the cold, in the ice, is probably the worst thing you can do. It turns into a block of ice.
Yeah, I'll say so.
Yeah, and unless you're wearing your snow gloves, which you probably won't be doing anyway because you want to take photos and you can't do that with snow gloves.
That's right.
Your hands turn to a block of ice. It really is uncomfortable. I actually didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. So if you are going into the snow, I would suggest highly that you either have a separate bag that you strap to your backpack, so like around the waist or in the front, where you can drop your camera into, or a sling, like a shoulder strap. Or failing that, one of the things that I actually found really useful is a Peak Design, a clip that fits onto your shoulder strap of your backpack, and your camera hangs off your shoulder, so it's always there. So you just literally grab it, press the button, it releases it, take the photo, click it back onto your shoulder, and keep walking. Carry straps, really, really important. What else did I find that was useful? Oh, yeah. Here's an interesting one. When you buy a tripod, you sometimes get these little metal spikes that fit at the bottom of the feet. Have you ever had a tripod that had those?
I do, yes. I've got my big one like that, I think.
On some other tripods, you can actually take the rubber feet off and put metal spikes there. And for a very long time, I was like, why the hell would I want metal spikes? I mean, it's just not going to grab anywhere. So I got rid of all my metal spikes. But when you're shooting in the snow or the ice, they come in really, really handy because they lock your tripod in place as opposed to your tripod starts doing the splits.
Very true.
And I had that really flimsy carbon fiber one, which is not. It holds your camera and you can take photos, but it's the legs separate. So basically, what ended up happening was the legs started spreading apart, and it just got wider and wider, and they were bent, like they weren't even straight anymore at one point. So those.
So did you actually stuff up the tripod, or is the tripod alright?
No, the tripod's fine. This is probably the 7th or 8th trip that it's gone around the world, and it's still going strong. Also, another thing which I found, which I've never really understood what the reason was for it, but I've left them on there. Some tripods on their legs have a foam sheath around the actual leg, like a cover. Now, I've never really understood why it was there. I thought it was just a visual thing, but that foam is fantastic because a tripod, regardless if it's metal or carbon, they say carbon, it doesn't happen as much, but regardless if it's metal or carbon, the tripod gets super, super cold, and just like holding a block of ice in your hand again. Now, if you have that foam, it actually doesn't burn your hands from the cold. Of course, I had removed the foam from my tripod, not thinking anything of it, trying to get it more lightweight. So, that happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's another one. Hygiene. Carry tissues. Your nose won't stop running when you.
That is true. Yes, I totally forgot about the cold weather part. Yes, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, so basically carry tissues with you because using your lens cleaner doesn't really work well.
So what was the favorite location out of Canada? As in, Is it Canada or would it have been US? That would have been a favorite?
I have to say each one of them was actually quite unique in its own way. Vancouver is very much like Melbourne, except it constantly just rains. And not a heavy rain, it's more of a just drizzle, yeah. It just doesn't stop. Of course, it was just time of year, of course, and during summer it won't be like that. And having the mountains in the background between the buildings, like you got the CBD, and then you look down the street, and in the background you can see the mountains with snow caps and stuff. Amazing imagery.
Yeah.
Being in the snow was fantastic as well. It was, just something.
So how did you handle the cold weather? That's the question.
It wasn't bad, believe it or not. I was walking around with a T-shirt, a long sleeve T-shirt, a short sleeve T-shirt, and just a fleece, and that was it. And minus 20 degrees.
Yeah.
That was because there was no wind. I think if the wind had come up, it would have been a completely different story.
True.
If you're walking along and doing exercise, like walking through the snow, you heat up like there's no tomorrow. So having a massive snow jacket with you, which I actually did have, was just nightmarish. It just became a blast furnace, and you couldn't breathe. It was so hot. And you just take it off, you're sweating in every direction, which is, I didn't expect that. But yeah, look,
I think I totally agree. I remember when I went to Antarctica, and I mean, look, I went during summer there, so -12 was probably the worst. But it was still like I've noticed that I just had to wear a like a long sleeve top, fleece, and then something like a windbreaker or something. And that was plenty. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting. If you didn't wear those snow boots, the big giant tennis rackets on your feet, you'd be walking along because you'd take them off and you think, I don't need these. I can, and you'd walk a couple of meters and then suddenly you just drop into the snow up to your neck,
Yeah.
and you'd just be
How
buried.
deep was the snow, you reckon?
I had at one stage I fell into the snow and the top of a tree went up my pants.
Oh,
So I was on top of the trees, so it was amazing. Now, because we were in an area which was really fresh snow and it was fantastic for skiing, it was like everyone was skiing, snowboarding, skiing, tobogganing, you name it, they were doing it. The actual snow, it was really interesting because normally, the snow I've had here locally in Victoria, put it in your mouth and it just tastes like a Slurpee. It's like not tasty, but it's wet. The snow up there was like putting sand in your mouth. It was dry and it was
no.
really bizarre. But yeah, it was an experience. I didn't expect that. And on a side note, don't eat the yellow snow. It's not banana flavored. Had to keep reminding my kids that. Not the yellow snow. Not the yellow snow. Don't put it down. Put it down.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting taste, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, one thing, Antarctica, when you went to Antarctica, you took my variable ND filter with me and you didn't end up using it. And this is something we discussed in the past episode.
Yes.
I took it along expecting to use it, and believe it or not, I didn't use it either.
There you go. I told you so.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You'd expect to, it's so bright and so white, and I'm walking around with sunglasses all the time. But when I was taking photos, I didn't actually use the ND filter. I was shooting an ISO 100 or an ISO 50 at a very, very fast shutter speed. So if you don't have an ISO 50, it might be a different story altogether. But for me, I actually didn't use it, and I didn't overexpose or anything, which I found quite unique.
Well, I guess, in a landscape component, you kind of, stopping down to f11 plus, you know what I mean, to be able to get, the whole foreground, background sharp and everything else. So, I mean, you don't really want an ND filter on that because, I mean, you're still going to be quite, I mean, unless you want to do long exposure during the day, that's a different story, but,
But yeah, look, it was an interesting experience. I just want to do a shout out to someone I met in Vancouver, actually. So it's when we first landed in Vancouver, we were touring around, having a look at everything, and I came across a photographer who goes by the name of Karen Cooper. She's an internationally renowned and awarded photographer. She receives awards for her photography, her natural landscape photographies. I met her, I think it was at Granville Island, and she has a little studio there. And I was walking past, and so I was walking past, and my wife said, "Oh, do you want to go in and have a look around?" And you know me, I'm not the type of person who sits there ogling at other people's work, but I thought, fair enough, I'll have a look at something local. And I walked in, and she does a lot of her prints on that metallic paper. Well, it's not paper, it's almost like a silver foil. And it creates
aluminium, yeah.
Yes, that's it. And it creates this 3D sort of a visual effect where it gives depth to the image as opposed to just a flat image. And she had some amazing photos. And so a big shout out to Karen Cooper, who actually now follows me on Instagram. She was just so friendly. She was like, "Come on in," and she was answering questions and giving directions and telling you where you can get the best shots and this, that, and the other. She was so down to earth. Yeah. And it was interesting because at the time I didn't know very much about her background, but it seems that she took up photography because of a car accident. So while she was recuperating, she started doing walking in nature. So, and her friends would, she'll take photos, and her friends were like, "Oh, these are amazing photos. You should, publish these." So while she was recovering from a car accident and she was doing these nature walks to just build up her stamina and strength, she was carrying a camera and taking photos, and that's where it originated. So it was, it's an interesting way to get into photography, and I think that sort of shows in the way she approaches people, and she's so friendly and supportive. She doesn't have this whole attitude. So if you're ever in Granville Island, look her up. She's the only person there who does photography. It's just as you enter Granville Island through the main gate. She is truly amazing, and she's
fantastic.
Yeah, it's and we keep in contact now, so it's Really, really fantastic.
Well, mate, you know what? If she wants, I'm sure if she wants to come down to Melbourne and walk around, I'm sure we can take her and show her, some nice locations around Melbourne as well. You know what I mean? So it goes both ways as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean?
And so she doesn't actually shoot with a Sony, believe it or not. What do you think she shoots with?
Oh, don't tell me, bloody Canon user.
No, Nikon.
Ah, even worse, bloody potato.
Oh, okay, it's not that bad.
No, I'm joking. Actually, I've got one of my mates actually shoots with a Nikon as well. He's creating some amazing images too. So, and yeah, and it's a red.
You might remember Isabella, who we had on the show very
Oh,
early on.
yes,
She's a Nikon
that's
user
right.
too. But I think the color science of Nikon is very similar to Canon in the sense that it's got a very warm feel to it, as opposed to Sony, which has got the colder sort of tinge, and then you got to warm it up. I just wanted to quickly get into Hawaii because there was a couple of things that happened in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're in Hawaii, take a dust bomb with you. Don't use.
Oh, what dust bomb did you say?
Yeah, so it's like this little. It looks like a bomb, and it's got a nozzle on the front of it, and you squeeze it and it pumps out air.
Oh, yeah, okay, a little blower.
Blower. I call it a dust bomb because my one's actually got little wings on it like a bomb. So it's an Italian one. It's called a dust bomb. Anyway.
Okay.
When you get sand on your lenses, and there's sand everywhere in Hawaii, being an island, a tropical island, you can't just use a cloth to clean your screen. So I'm sitting there, like blowing. I didn't bring mine, of course. So I'm sitting there going, blowing all over
That's
it,
not a good idea.
and then saliva falls all over it, and then it sticks to the set, and you're like, Right, now, the one thing that I found hilarious, right, and I've got to say this, right, it's for my people on Instagram, If you're an Instagram model or an influencer, just know you look like a dick emerging from the water over and over and over again with a constant constipated look on your face.
What happened? Do tell.
So we're sitting on the beach, Waikiki. We're sitting there enjoying it. Kids are building sandcastles. I'm, hibernating from the sun. By the way, when you go from -20 to plus 37, 40, your body doesn't react very well.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. But anyway, so we're at the beach, and we're sitting there like relaxing and chilling out. The kids are building sandcastles and running around in the water and stuff. And suddenly we see this girl walking in and out of the water, doing exactly the same thing over and over. It was like the Matrix. And I just suddenly went, what the hell's going on? And I started looking at her, and then I realized she had someone sitting there, like just behind us, with a camera with a massive zoom lens, and he was filming her walking out of the water. And as she was emerging from the water, she'd flick her hair side to side, right? And she'd look at the camera with this. But she was trying to achieve this sexy look, but she looked constipated. And I'm like, what's wrong with her? Does she need to go to the toilet? Is there something wrong? And then the guy would run up with the camera and show it to her, and she would go,
Yeah.
and get
None
back
of
into
the women like their own photos, mate.
But it was funny. They just kept doing it over and over, and you just sort of look at these people and you think, you really do look like you're constipated, then you look like a complete dick.
Yeah.
And I think she must have, while sitting in front of us, she must have done it about 10, 15 times. And then this is my wife's all-time pet hate. My wife loves to organise accommodation through Airbnb. And I've got to say, some of the places that she's gotten have been absolutely amazing. Value for money, spacious, all mod cons, you name it. In this particular instance, we decided to go for this place, which was on Airbnb. It's opposite the beach. It was like just where the kids' pool is. It's like, yeah, this is perfect. We can chill out. The kids can go downstairs and play. We don't have to stress out too much. We can keep an eye on them. Anyway, so we look at the photos on Airbnb, right? And the place looked amazing. It was spacious, and it was white, and it was clean, and it looked fresh, and the colours were vibrant. And anyway, so we went, this place looks amazing. This looks really good. It looks breezy. It looks beautiful. So we hired the place, and we got there, and we opened the door. And we walk inside, and we're like 2 meters into the room. We just stopped, and we just looked around like, I think we're in the wrong room. It was horrific. It was the most filthiest place I've ever been in. All right, it was It was just terrible. It really was. I have to give credit to the photographer for taking these photos and making it look impressive, because the photos looked impressive. But the problem is there has to be a certain level of realism in your photos. So real estate photographers and Airbnb photographers, when you're taking photos, be mindful that the photos you take should look like what the place is like. So we got in there, basically the windows were all bolted shut. Cupboards were falling off. Everything was worn out.
What?
Colors were terrible. It was horrendous. It really was. And my poor wife, who really takes pride in picking these places, and she's had a fantastic track record, she was devastated. And she was like, you could see her sitting there chewing on, on her lips. She's like, trying to figure out what to do. And we stayed there for one night. We were meant to be there for 5 or 6 nights. And it was
I wonder why.
and you and I, Marty, when we travel, we don't really care. I mean, it's sure, it's nice to have a 5-star accommodation sort of place, but at the same time, when we're traveling, we're like, oh, who cares? We're just here to sleep and we'll get up.
Well, that's right. We're blokes, mate. We do whatever, as long as you got a clean sheet on the bed, that's fine.
Exactly. It's like when we went to India and Paul Robb got electrocuted in the bathtub because
there was a whole circuit board in the shower.
Opened up and the water just anyway. We shouldn't laugh about that. Paul Robb, we're sitting here laughing about his misfortunes, but anyway, it was terrible. And the next morning, we woke up and it was like I could see her chewing it over, and we ended up leaving. And basically cancelling the whole thing and getting a refund. It was actually a bit of a nightmare to do that, because you have to negotiate with the person who runs the place, and then they were like, "I will only give you back your money if you don't leave a review." And you sort of go, "Oh, yeah, exactly." So anyway, that aside, if you're a photographer who's doing real estate or Airbnbs, try and be honest. Because I mean, it's like when you take a photo of this teensy-weensy room that barely could fit one person in it, and you stretch it out and you put this wide-angle lens and you make it look like a concert hall, It's not right.
Yeah, it's the tricky stuff, man.
Yeah. But look, other than the bad accommodation on the first night, Hawaii is amazing. Travelled around the island, saw so much. I posted up a few photos as well. I haven't released too many photos as yet. I just haven't had enough time. But Hawaii is truly a beautiful place to visit.
Yeah, I'd like to go there.
Yeah, it still has got the boat where the treaty between America and Japan was signed and everything.
Nice.
It's a beautiful place, and there's a lot of history there, and it's definitely worth visiting. And don't just visit the main island. There are so many smaller islands. Lanai, which is one of my favourites if you're into doing absolutely nothing, because there isn't really much to do there, is a beautiful and relaxing place. But yeah, that's pretty much a trip.
Right, that sounds pretty good. I mean, other than obviously crap your room, but it's pretty impressive, man. Where it is, like to go there. I know. Look, traveling with kids is not an easy thing as well. No. So that you actually managed to sort of bring camera gear and obviously get a bit of shots in there as well. That's fantastic. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's definitely something that to be happy about. So no, it's good, mate. Well done. And I'm glad that you took my recommendations and you kind of I guess look, if you had the Northern Lights, then potentially the wide angle would come on, right?
It would. Look, different environment. In the Northern Lights, summer, spring, when you can actually see more than just white everywhere, it would have been a really useful lens. But in that environment where everything was just snow and white, you just take this wide shot, and all you're really getting is this big white patch with a couple of black spots in here and there. It doesn't really work. In that instance, I think the zoom lens was my best friend, and I got some amazing nature shots. So that was really good. And like I said, I was wishing that I had the 70-200. The reality behind it is I probably would have used it, probably 5 times, and it would have just been extra weight.
Yeah, that's right.
In hindsight, if I was to do that same trip again, I would probably just take the F4 24-105, and that was it. Stick it into one camera.
Yeah.
No filters, no nothing. I ended up. I didn't even use the tripod that much for landscape shots, and I was doing panoramic shots, like 9 photos stitched together of a bay and stuff like that. I did it all handheld.
Yeah. That's possible. It's very straightforward. Yeah.
I've never really tried it handheld before, and I thought, well, why not?
It does work.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to aim a little bit, I guess. But yeah, it works, so I would have probably left the tripod at home as well. But once again, if you had left everything behind, the chances are that, you would have...
Yeah, you want to use it.
Yeah, you would have... As soon as you get there, the Northern Lights pop out of nowhere and you're like, oh, shit.
Yep.
But yeah.
It's good, man. No, thanks for sharing your trip, man.
And we've got another one in the pipeline at the moment that we're doing just purely photography. Yourself, myself, Rob. I'm just hopefully doesn't get electrocuted this time. And Paul, I believe. Is it Paul? Paul, yeah.
Yeah, Paul, one of the other guys, is coming down with us as well. So we're doing a bit of a, Asia. I'm looking forward to this trip, actually. I reckon it should be a good trip. And I think I'm only going to bring one camera, one lens, and that's pretty much it. Maybe a tripod.
Yeah.
No filters, nothing else, I don't think.
That's pretty much what I'm going to do. I probably won't even bring the tripod, to be honest. I'm probably just going to bring just the camera and the 24-105. That's all you're going to really need.
Yeah. And then maybe a GoPro as well. Actually, you know what? I bought the new DJI Action 5 Pro, and I must say I'm actually quite impressed with that camera. It's the long life of the battery is fantastic, and then there's few other features that the GoPro kind of lags behind as well. So if anyone's into this sort of action cameras kind of stuff, because I use it for the drones, it's definitely worthwhile. So there you go.
You know what? We should actually probably do an episode on it. It's for people who are interested.
Yeah, we should actually. Yeah, no, it's definitely.
You can do a cost comparison.
It's a bit of a step up. Yeah, a bit of a step up from a GoPro, which is quite an interesting one. I mean, GoPro is still fantastic, but I've got 5 GoPros at the moment, and I've got one DJI Action 5 Pro, and I think I'll be selling a few GoPros and getting maybe 1 or 2 extra Action 5s. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Well, that's pretty much it, unless you've got any questions for me.
I haven't actually seen any photos of the snow.
Yeah, I actually haven't released any.
Yeah, that's fine. So maybe shoot it through, mate, and then we'll add it to the Instagram thing, so if people want to see it.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe not. I want to see a location where you stayed in a hut. That's what I wanted to see.
Yep. I've actually got photos of it, but yeah. All right, well, I'll send those photos through.
That's great, man. That's great. All right, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing, mate.
Thank you. And we'll catch up with you guys in the next episode.